it though. God damn it.
Really great.
Maybe the middle part?
How do you...
Corner was beautiful. I'm so excited to
That's pretty good.
I'm so glad it finished.
Okay. Hawaii. Hawaii. Ow. Oh, goes it live over there?
Do you want to just move the chair over?
I'm just silencing my own cell phone. You guys don't have to do the same, but that'd be great. Okay, I'm Jenna Weingarten. Thank you. I do a comedic memoir, mostly spoken word. So I decided to, these are old ones, I did drawings to them. I'll show you the drawings after I read them. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm going to read like 4 of them maybe. Maybe you were at Feeding Tube a while ago, you've already heard them. I'm sorry. And then I'm going to do a longer spoken word piece that's fresh off the press. I just wrote it, just finished it. It's like yesterday, so hot. So, ow. You can't even hold it. Okay. So, yeah, these ones are like, they're shorts that were like they're like really brief moments that were too short to expand into longer pieces. So I like, you know, just made them cute and shit so that they work. All right. This one time I was sitting on a relatively uncrowded subway platform and I had the Stone Temple Pilots song Creep stuck in my head, except at the time the only lyrics I knew were take time with a wounded hand cause it likes to heal. So I just sang that over and over again. When the train rolled up I was still singing. When I stepped into the car I thought fuck it and kept singing the same string of words. Suddenly I felt someone staring daggers at me and made eye contact with a frazzled young woman. Both her arms were held out at right angles as though she were a robot. With a sinking feeling, I realized that not one but 2 of her hands were sealed into giant casts. Needless to say, I stopped singing. That's her. She's kind of a dick about it. I obviously was not directing it at her, but that's the train, the Stone Temple Pilots. You guys can buy these if you want for like $1 or just take them afterwards. Okay. This one time it was my first gynecology appointment when I was 14. Not only was my first gynecologist when I was 14 a middle-aged man, but my first gynecologist when I was 14 was a middle-aged man with circular glasses and a neck brace. I remember being reclined on a chair, my legs wrenched open, watching this man's chin slurp over the neck brace as he craned in for a better view. Later, as I was being prescribed birth control, I asked him whether or not the first row in the pack was the sugar pills, and he was like, oh yeah. So for 2 whole years of my life, I was taking only 2 weeks of active birth control, consuming the 4th week of sugar pills, and ditching the whole 1st week of hormones. When guys ask why it's weird when men are gynecologists arguing that they're just doctors, I find myself agreeing. They're just doctors. That's him. He's kind of creepy up there too. So this is what birth control looks like. That's what this is not healthy right there. That is healthy, just in case you have that going on. Not be doing that. I'm gonna skip this one. It's kind of longer. This one's too creepy. I don't like the memories. Is Mark here? Mark Candulor?
I told him to.
He was on his way. He was texting me, but this is about him. Early one morning, I'm in the bathroom peeing half naked. After I wrap up the job, I get the pause at the door to hear my housemate Mark is walking by. But Mark is basically a Ninja Ghost hybrid, and I almost always run into him when I least expect it. So I open the door wearing nothing but cut-off jean shorts, my triangle tits wagging out. And sure enough, there's Mark, also topless, wearing nothing but cut-off jean shorts. We literally have the same outfit on. From then on, I hardly bother shutting the bathroom door. This is Mark as a whiz genie. he is my pee in this picture. It's pretty cute. This one's pretty creepy. All right, I'm gonna do one more of these, and then I'll do the longer spoken word. There was this time I was on a subway, and it was my first time in New York City alone. I was 19 and sitting in front of where the train doors open. At one stop, the doors opened, and I was sitting directly opposite a dead man on a bench. Police officers were at the scene poking the corpse and saying over the radios, "They got a dead guy on a bench here." And then the doors slid shut, we moved on. When I got to my stop in the Bronx, I exited the train with a rush of other people. A woman was walking in front of me wearing Nike brand shoes, Nike brand spandex, and a Nike brand running shirt. I brushed against her arm by accident, and she screamed in terror and leapt away from me. I froze, unsure of what I had just done. I watched her fly up the steps towards the street exit, but it didn't look as though she were running in frantic fear. It was as if she wanted me to see how expertly and sportively she could bound up the steps to behold her perfect form. Later, when I arrived at my friend's apartment, I couldn't stop talking about her, how strangely powerful she'd made me feel, only to make me feel powerless in the end. The dead guy was an afterthought. That's the dead guy. He was actually in the middle of the bench, but art. Gotta make sacrifices. That's her Nike butt. Okay, cool. These are available. Okay. All right, this is one that's hot off the press. It's called Lou and the Russians. It's about my friend Louise. Some of y'all know her. She's a good girl. She wanted it to be called The Golden Stroke, so that's the alternative title. It's honestly not that good, but it's cool. Okay. I'm chilling at the crib when a text dings in. It's my girl Louise. It reads, "Hey dude, where are you?" It reads, "Me and Beth are kind of in a situation right now. We could use some help with it." It says there's these two men here and it's pretty intense. I take the last swig of a beer and write back, "You want me to come over or whatever?" And she's like, "Yeah, if you don't mind." So I say, "Sure don't," and pull my boots on, taking a moment to pick out a song for the car ride. Commodore's The Night Shift. I groove over there into the back streets of Florence to a troubling old house, the type of house that sits next to an ambiguous chemical plant, the type of house whose old septic tank has been secretly leaking ancient sewage into the Mill River for decades, a house where ghosts are known to exist, where Lydia Lunch stays for a night and sees the same two suspects that everyone sees, a man and a woman Harriet, walking the hallways like a couple of jerks. Houses like this that absorb headspace as well as create it always force a general sense of bondage. I roll into the driveway and amble up to the front door, both hands shoved tightly into my pockets, concealing the potentiality of fists. When I enter the house, everything freezes, a tableau vivant containing Louise and Bethany in creamy lace undergarments perched at the kitchen table, their knees pressed tightly together. And then there's two white guys with short cropped hair lording over the scene. One is a scrappy man with the face of a rodent, the eyes of a snake, his eyes threatening to consume the rest of his face at any moment, penetrating the starved. And the other dude, a friggin' giant, a strong man with his shirt off, muscles tense on his chest, holding an old musket in one hand, the other hand touching a shoebox on the kitchen table containing a few handfuls of large gold coins. "Oh, good, you're here," Louise grins, snapping the scene back into motion. The scrappy guy offers a hand and says his name Tully, and the other one lets out a grunt or something. I detect a weird accent that they both share. "What's your accent?" I ask. They say it's Russian. "So you're from Russia?" They say no, Massachusetts. "So it's fake I scoff?" They say no. But Louise butts in to avoid further conflict. "Do you need to borrow some lace underwear or bloomers?" she asked me. I shrug. I don't have any on me, so if I could borrow some, yeah, obviously that'd be chill. So I start off this scene imagining that I might be asked to tackle a 250-pound bodybuilder with a potentially operational musket in hand, but then quickly accept the fact that I am now to be dressed in skimpy white bloomers and a lace bra. But another instance of the house's bondage, I guess. I get changed quietly. "Okay, so what is with the gold coins?" I ask. "Russian currency," they tell me. So they still use gold coins and muskets in Russia, Massachusetts. Learn something new every hour. "So how does one acquire so much gold?" I dig further, and they immediately launch into stories about being in the Russian mafia, about how they make a good chunk of change, about how to sell free PDFs of books on Amazon.com and make thousands a month, about how Tully watched his own father get shot in the head and die. I whispered to Louise, "And how do you know these two gentlemen?" And she's like, "High school. Tully had taken her virginity." totally. Now this all makes sense, but the bondage of it all is starting to crack. So I decide to take a break and grab a smoke on the porch. I'm framed in the doorway, not wanting to take my eye off Tully, sending him daggers through chains of smoke. He stares back from the kitchen. He stares back, and I say, I genuinely don't like you, though. I say, forcing my own hand of reality onto the house. Honestly, I'm not joking, though. And in truth, it's complicated. I admittedly feel a familiar fire flare up in me, a fire that loves to consume men in their many ways of making money, but for real, I say, nah, dude, I don't trust you. And this fucks with his face, a twitch in his lip. I need to overcome me and force back his hand. He doesn't respond with words, but rather he disappears for a moment, only to reappear with a series of small gifts. At this point, I'm sitting on a deck chair where he's on one knee, brandishing each gift with the flourish of a magic man. A plate of small fancy pickles, corny shawls, some weird little olives, no pits, a teacup of mid-grade vodka of the Russian variety, of course. My legs are pulled up on the deck chair, knees squeezed together as he hovers, cautiously making his round of offerings, his hand taut, ready to flick back at the sight of teeth. Sure, I make rude snapping gestures at him. Most of the gifts I reject. The vodka I sip at delicately, glaring over the rim of the porcelain teacup. These boys have all their props, I think. The musket, the pirate's booty, the cleverly crafted gifts, all cheap but designed to look real from the distance and frame of a middle school stage. But my dudes, we're in a black box right now, and their budget is all too transparent. I'm going in, I announced, knocking past Tully and his smooth-chested friend. By this point, Beth has conveniently made herself missing, leaving Louise and I to handle whatever situation this actually is. We all move into the living room, an odd spread of furniture featuring two musty couches placed next to each other, both facing nothing in particular. And Louise and I sit on different couches, and yet next to one another, pressed to the edge of our respective cushions, our knees all but brushing. The strong man decides to try his luck, plopping down next to Louise, and Tully carefully makes his approach, eyeing the cushion next to me. No, Tully, I say, you sit on the floor. And he does. He kneels down a good yard away. He kneels and watches me intently as Louise and I start engaging in small banter, parlor talk about nothing in particular. Every so often, I look up to chide Tully for scooching closer, and each time Louise gives a churlish laugh, seemingly unaware of the strong man inching in, closing the small gap between them. She leans in towards me to say, hey, thanks for being here, dude. I clap a hand on her knee, yeah, of course. And she gives me a hard look saying, I know these dudes are dumb. She says, I know, but some things that are so deeply rooted, they're hard to unroot alone. And I nod, thinking of the high school friends I had to unroot. Not that they were oppressive and terrifying straight men. My experience was much gayer than all that, but nonetheless, I understood why I was there. I understood. Suddenly, I realized the hand I have on Louise's knee is not alone. The strong man has managed to close in the gap, and slowly he starts stroking her thigh. Very small strokes at first, as though to go unnoticed, and then broader strokes. Strokes that remind me of a toddler petting a puppy's head for the first time. And though I am there for Louise, I know this is for her to reject. I look up to find Tully's serpentine eyes, devouring the movement of his friend's thickly padded hands, perhaps regretting his decision to target the obvious bitch. His stare is burning straight through Louise's thigh, then suddenly his attention snaps when a bubbling laugh rolls out of her, and the warmth of the laugh somehow makes it cruel enough that it forces the strong man's hand to stop in mid-stroke. Dude, your touch is crazy, she says. You don't even know how to touch someone like a human? And she laughs again, which makes me laugh, and I say, I want to feel touch my arm. And the strong man looks at me all hurt and bewildered like, but he complies and strokes my arm once. More laughter. I even catch Tully trying to share in the laugh. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that you're a predator that can't touch? That you expected to walk into this house of bondage and dominate your prey, and yet here we are laughing, and you're so threatening, and you have no control. As someone that can't even touch me, laugh, and Louise says, Jenna, show him how to touch. Touch my leg, Jenna. And so I stroke her thigh without thought or effort. I start stroking her, and she closes her eyes for a moment. She laughs and says, that feels incredible, dude. And when she opens her eyes, she looks at me and says, I love you, dude. And I say, yeah, me too. But she says, no, I really love you, And I realize I'm still stroking her thigh, and I realize this room is so ripe with sex that these men are used to dominating that sex. And I realize that now I am usurping that necessarily I replace their sexual dominance with more sexual dominance. Will you stay with me tonight, Louise asks. You want me to? Yeah, if you don't mind. So I say, sure don't, and pull my boots off, tossing them a little too close to where Tully is crouching. Wait, Tully looks hurt, no longer sporting a Russian accent. Can we stay here too? The couch is my dude, Louise says, grabbing my arm and pulling me upstairs to her room. When her bedroom door is shut, a white noise that I wasn't even aware of comes to a grinding halt. Now I hear the songbirds in their cage quietly peeping, the soft slithering of Leonard the snake cozying up in the sock drawer, a gust of wind through the flowery walls, a gust of wind from Harriet's grave, and Louise and I collapse into bed. I'd witnessed what she wanted me to see, and now we collapse, our lace undergarments bunched into the crevices of our bodies, our arms and legs tucked into each other, and I wonder for a moment if I'm about to have sex with my friend. But then I think of Tully and the strong man in fetal positions on the couches downstairs, and I think that sex is just merging in the best way we can, and holy shit, did we merge tonight, Louise and I. And my only wish for this night, my final thought as I drift off, is that Tully and the strong man would one day find the strength to fuck each other to death. Thank you. Well, who's next? Lucy? Lucy, I'm excited. Lucy.